It's the Security Weekly News, and it is episode 409, which is starting to make us all feel old. It is Friday, the 23rd of August, 2024, and I'm Doug White. Today we've got faking your own death, faking reviews, solar winds, AWS, recall, Winux, Kubernetes, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365.25 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respective compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
All right, from the island of Elba, it's the Security Weekly News, and I'm Doug White. Hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment like you're squashing cockroaches in that college apartment you had that cost $110 a month. Let me tell you, I learned a lot about squashing things. All right, not just cockroaches either. All right, Microsoft, we're on them again. I tell you, I won't leave them alone, right? You'd think they're going to call me to come to one of their conferences or something to try to appease me. But Microsoft said they will begin making their AI recall feature, making their AI recall feature available to insiders with Copilot Plus in October. Now, this is a device that actually has Copilot Plus on it, so it's not just all Microsoft devices. If you haven't seen this thing, so we've talked about this thing before, this feature, I don't know, you can call it a feature if you want to. This feature will take screenshots at intervals of your active windows. So while you're working or whatever you're doing, it's going to take screenshots at at timed intervals. And then it supposedly analyzes them using a neural processing unit, which is part of that, I think, Copilot system, and an AI. I don't really know what kind of analysis they're doing on them, but it says it will add this information to an SQLite database. I've never known how to say that one either. And according to Microsoft, this would allow you to recall things that you've looked at by searching this database later. So I guess if I'm reading about logarithmic regression, it would put that in a database. And I don't know if it puts other stuff in the database about logarithmic regressions. And then I guess it AIs it somehow. And then when I need information about logarithmic regression, it's going to go back to what I was working with. I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm just literally terrified of this thing. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I don't understand why I would want it or what it would do for me. I'm sure there's a bunch of slick advertising stuff coming that will explain exactly why we need this, but I'm just not sure what they're up to there. So, if I'm typing in Word, a screenshot of my paper is captured, fed to some mystery AI. Now, it does something to it and then puts it in a database. And then later I want that back. I don't understand what I'm getting back. Like, has it been processed somehow? I just don't really understand. And I'm sure Microsoft would say, well, go read about it, stupid. But it really bothers me. Now, they make a big deal about this is local. Local. It's a local database. It's a local AI running on a local chip and a local processor. But would this thing be capturing screenshots of, say, like my password vault if I have it open? And I go, I can't remember my password. And it looks up my password from screenshots of my password vault. I can't remember my bank account number. And it looks up from when I was doing online banking. Like, what was my investment in Microsoft? And it looks that up from the screenshot. I mean, bad news. The AI is going to figure out my investment account's pretty empty, but hey, and I need a cigar sponsor too. But anyway, the launch of this was already postponed once since no one wanted it, no one understood it, and no one trusted it. I mean, it's like this big glowing chalice of doom on your machine. It's going to be a huge target because it's like, here's a database full of everything you've looked at, typed in, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And oh yeah, it's local. So I guess the security responsibility is on you, not on them. I mean, in no way a massive corporation would maybe get greedy and decide to use this data inappropriately to sell information. No way. That never happens. Remember when Google's motto was "Don't be evil"? Yeah, they got rid of that pretty quick. But I mean, Microsoft promised they would prioritize security. Yeah, like prioritize it. Right. Like it's a priority. Like which priority? But the claim is that the database is encrypted with Microsoft Hello and that it's, very locked down and nobody can ever get to it. But I just don't really understand the point of why you would want to do this and create your very own security nightmare right there on your local machine, just so you could get some AI processed version of that paper you were writing last week back later. I mean, is it like an undo feature? I just don't understand. I mean, if it is an undo, why do you need AI? I'm totally at a loss on this thing. I'm going to have to read more about it. You should be reading about it too, because they'll probably eventually slap it in all Microsoft desktops. And then you're going to be sitting there at your company going, wow, people are typing proprietary stuff on their screens and Microsoft is capturing it in a local database. No way that ever goes wrong. Right. Sure. Well, okay, it's another Microsoft bash. So we got more bashing on Microsoft today. Microsoft confirmed that their August 2024 Windows security updates are causing Linux boot issues on dual boot systems with Secure Boot enabled. I didn't even know that would work anyway. I've never tried that, but yeah. So the issue is caused by Secure Boot Advanced Targeting, which it had an update. And that was an update to prevent Linux bootloaders from being installed that are vulnerable to the Grub2 Secure Boot bypass vulnerability, which is good. I mean, I'm glad it's what Secure Boot's supposed to do for you, right? It's supposed to prevent you from installing things that are not signed, that have vulnerabilities and so forth. Now, the message that you would get if you try to boot up your Linux with this says verifying shim SBAT data failed, security policy violation, something has gone seriously wrong, SBAT self-check failed, security policy violation. So what this means is your Linux isn't going to boot. So Secure Boot is blocking the grub loader or whatever loader you're using from booting into your Linux partition. Now, I've never been a dual boot fan. I've known plenty of people who did. Lou was a huge dual boot fan and had all these I don't remember, Boot Commander or something, and had 13 different operating systems ready to load on a moment's notice. I just was never a huge fan of it. I when I ran Windows, if I need to run Windows as dual boot, I ran it on Linux, not the other way around. And when I need Linux, I ran it as a virtual machine. And I get it. If you need it, you need it, and so forth. But I mean, I've done all those things, and I've set all those things up, and I've seen all those things going. But I just like my VMs better than that. But I know a lot of you do it, and I get it. I mean, no judgment. But when you need Linux, you need Linux, and when you need Windows, you need Windows. And some people say, well, okay, I'll run Windows on my laptop, but I can boot into Linux anytime I want to, or vice versa. I just like the Linux version that better. But anyway. There was a lot of reports in this about Ubuntu, Mint. Oh, I love Mint, Zorin, Puppy, and others that would not boot after you installed this update and rebooted. Now, if you installed the updates and you rebooted, you are screwed. That was basically, they didn't say it that way, but that was what they were saying. There is not really any way to fix it except, so the only thing they said you could do if you had rebooted your system was to disable Secure Boot And of course, think about it. If you already installed the updates and you rebooted and got the error message, then you have rebooted, right? But they said you would have to disable secure boot, reinstall your Linux distro, and then re-enable secure boot. And, so all I would say there is be really careful with your partitions, because if you don't really understand that Linux install process, it would be easy to wipe your data. So if you've got, if you have all your data in the same partition as your distro, it's starting to get scary already. So if you can back up the partition, I don't know if you could boot the machine with Linux, like boot it overall and maybe mount the partition and copy everything off. But regardless, if you are in this jam, you may want to think carefully about how to protect your data. Microsoft does have a workaround if you haven't already updated the installation and rebooted, but I'm not sure exactly what that scenario would be. I mean, I'm not sure how you even know you have this problem. But if you've installed the updates and you haven't actually booted your Linux partition or rebooted your system and you don't know about it, you may want to try that set. But I really don't like dual boot. Never trusted it. One more, then I promise I'll quit bashing poor Microsoft this week. Microsoft Azure Kubernetes service has an issue that could allow an attacker to escalate privileges and access credentials for the services used by the Kubernetes cluster. I just like saying Kubernetes. Mandiant reported on this, and they said it was possible to gain access to sensitive information resulting in data theft, financial loss, and reputational damage, kind of like inviting the Security Weekly crew to your pool party or your party at DEF CON. Yeah, data theft, financial loss, reputational damage, mostly reputational damage and financial loss on our end. But basically, sorry, Ron, they said that if someone had command execution privilege in a Kubernetes pod, they can download, and that's important right there, they could download the configuration used to provision the cluster and then extract the TLS bootstrap tokens and perform a TLS bootstrap attack. So they could basically, the result of that kind of an attack would allow them to read all the secrets in the cluster. So they could just get everything, basically. It's not just those three things, it's pretty much everything. Basically what that means, if you don't know what Kubernetes does, is it creates these pods, which are collections of virtual machines, ephemerals, Dockers, all those kind of things, and collects them all together and manage them, right? So this is the Kubernetes pod. And they may all be doing different tasks. So they could each be a very, very specific, or they could be very broad, but they're basically, it's a building full of lock boxes, and a TLS bootstrap attack gives you the key to unlock all those safety boxes, safety deposit boxes. Now, it does mean you have to have a key to get in the building in the first place. Now, that may be given to you, so if you have students or employees accessing Kubernetes pods, they may already be in the building. So it's, this is called a second stage attack, but that doesn't mean it's not dangerous at all. They didn't seem to have any mitigations here, but they basically said, ensure no one can get into your pods that shouldn't be there. And I'm like, well, maybe even the people that should be there are a threat in this case. There should be a patch, I'm sure, for this, probably not too distant future. But if you're using Kubernetes clusters, this is something to be aware of, and think about who's accessing all your stuff, and maybe, ensure that they can't do things they shouldn't be doing, or at least monitor them. All right, away from Microsoft. AWS Application Load Balancer, or ALB, has a critical config problem, which is being called AL Beast. Now, what this thing would do is it can allow unauthorized access to your business resources, data breaches, and data exfiltration. Okay, so basically, you're screwed. So they list three things, but I'm like, well, if they can do all that, they can pretty much do whatever they want. Migo, M-I-G-G-O, sorry, Migo. Research reported that in 20 August blog post that indicated since the discovery this spring of the problem, they've identified more than 15,000 potentially vulnerable apps using the ALB authentication feature. So if you don't know what this is, the AWS load balancer is a distribution approach that lets, when you have a lot of incoming app traffic, which you hope you do, right, for your business. My business is, doesn't have this problem. I'm more like a load disperser kind of thing. But if you have a lot of incoming app traffic, it pushes it across multiple instances. So, that way people is not slow. And the AL Beast issue then can allow an authentication and authorization bypass in apps that are exposed on the internet, which of course is sort of the point of all this. So ALB authentication was released back in 2018, And, when they released it, they had docs to help you with the implementation. But the MiGo researchers said they discovered that the docs were missing two crucial parts. I mean, like, imagine that, bad documentation. I'm like, yeah, been there, also have written that. Yeah. So people are like, you left out this part. The team found that there were steps that were needed to validate the signed token and that those steps were missing. And of course, most of the devs who were implementing this just followed the steps that were given to them in the docs, right? The company says, here's the docs to implement this, you implement it. And yeah, they sort of left out something really important. So, the steps missing, I didn't do it. Maybe I was afraid to do it. I don't know. And then, anyway, but the other issue was a misconfiguration of the security groups that they tell you to do. And this is a common issue in AWS setups. They just don't tell you how to configure those security groups, or they tell you wrong how to configure them. And MiGo suggested that AWS should change. I'm sorry, Mandiant suggested that they change the AWS ALB, or was this Mandiant or MiGo? This was, I'm sorry, now I forgot. MiGo. Sorry, this was MiGo, not Mandiant. So MiGo basically said they told AWS to fix this and told them how to fix it. And they said they could fix it on their side. And AWS chose not to do that. And they basically sent out some notifications to customers. 6 days ago, AWS issued some blog statements that had mitigations in them. So if you're using any of this in any of your apps, and you may well be, you may want to read up on these fixes and make sure that you're not going to be subject to this kind of problem. Solar winds, everybody, that's now a new cringe word. Solar wind. Yeah. And the minute you hear that, you immediately turn up the volume. So SolarWinds issued a second hot fix. You always love to see that too, for the web help desk vulnerability we talked about previously. Yeah, this one's even worse. So they put out a hot fix, and this new hot fix is removing the hard-coded credentials they included in their first hot fix for the web help desk issue. So that's painful. Yeah, I mean, the hard-coded creds, of course, could allow a remote unauthenticated user to access internal functionality and modify data. So that's what happens when you rush stuff to market, right? When somebody's screaming on the phone and saying, fix this, fix this, fix this. And we've all been there. Been sitting there with somebody yelling at me on the phone. I got sent to anger management training once because I told a very high-level person at the place I was working that, we were like, how long will this take? I'm tired of waiting. And I'm like, well, the more you yell at me, the longer it will take. It's a direct relationship between me being on the phone, listening to you. And they were like, oh yeah, we're going to send you to anger management. I was like, really? I'm not, now I'm angry. But anyway, that's what happens. Now the original issue, so this was the original problem, was a Java deserialization remote code execution problem, which of course is really bad. And that would allow remote attackers to execute commands on your SolarWinds host. So yeah, you don't want that. But they put out a hotfix for that. Now the claim was that this vulnerability allowed unauthenticated users to run commands, but SolarWinds said they could not reproduce it, which doesn't mean it's not there. But CISA added this problem to the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog 2 days after it was announced, and that's called the KEV, if you've not heard that. Now the hotfix came out that's going to fix this, right? And everybody was told to apply it. But oops, the hotfix, contained another problem, hard-coded credentials, which was immediately uncovered, and boom, now you got a new problem. So the second hotfix is going to fix the first hotfix, which was hotfix for the original problem. So fix the hotfix ASAP. Seriously. Okay, look, some things are a bad idea, okay? If any of you have, bad ideas, or you think it's a bad idea, it probably already is. And you want to bounce them off me, let me know so I can tell you it's a bad idea. Be happy to just send me, call me and say, Doug, I was thinking about doing this. You think it's a good idea? I can tell you it's probably not. It's like it's like this flow chart. Should I have another shot of tequila? And the next box says, are you already naked and standing on top of a snooker table in Fremont Street, Aaron? Then no. Otherwise, maybe yes, you're not there yet. But anyway, the University of California, Santa Cruz was trying to teach people about phishing. We've all seen this and or done this. And they sent out a message titled, wait for this, emergency notification, Ebola virus case on campus. Okay, that's not going to end well to start with. Now, the message that was attached to this said they were currently contact tracing, which a lot of campuses have done in the past for COVID and so forth. And they were trying to see if you were infected and you needed to log in and to this access page to get details. Well, I mean, I get the whole idea. Absolutely. I mean, if I get a message saying you may have contracted rabies from eating infected raccoon meat that was accidentally in the lasagna at the school cafeteria, probably a lot of students and faculty are going to click this link. And we get these all the time. I mean, I get them all the time from the school testing to see who will click phishing links, and they're usually something pretty, flammable. I saw one that was like, faculty salaries to be reduced to cover losses from, cover losses from sports scholarships or something. And, that gets a lot of people worked up pretty quick. And sending something out to students like tuition, like I saw one that said tuition to be retroactively increased. All students will be required to pay a 25% increase in tuition retroactively to when they started at the university. Probably quite a few students clicked this. And I don't think it's bad, because it is a good way to convince people that they're going to fall for the right message, the right phishing hook. But I'm going to warn you, especially schools, healthcare, schools, anything involving parents. If you send out messages that are going to freak people out, that they're going to run screaming to the ER because they think they're dying because they had the sniffles this morning, or because they were coughing up blood because maybe they vaped too much last night, but now they think they've got Ebola, it's probably not the best approach to deal with healthcare like this. And if the parents freak out, it may not end well, because parents tend to freak out and they tend to get really in your face about this kind of stuff. So apparently a lot of people clicked the link. So in that case, it was a good test. But the CIO sent out an apology shortly thereafter that said they were sorry about the, quote, unnecessary panic and such. I mean, it's a fine line. If it's too silly, nobody's going to click on it for sure, and your test is worthless. If it's too in your face, it may get people really upset. Now, ransomware people and hackers are merciless, right? I mean, they don't care. They will tell you your parents died to get you to click. I've gotten those before, I was like, well, my parents are already dead, so I knew that. But they will tell you your child, and I got this one, they'll tell you your child's been left at a bus stop in Newark by accident. Click here to allow her to be picked up, because if not, she'll be left there. I mean, I almost clicked that one. I was like, wow, my kid is standing somewhere and they're going to be left. I'm like, call my attorney, because we're going to sue the school to start with. But, what in the hell? I got to get my kid, right? And that's how these guys operate. And I mean, I get it. But this one, I don't know. I mean, glad I didn't do it. And it does kind of sound like something I would do, right? I mean, some of us aren't always the most sensitive and empathetic to human needs. So maybe bounce these off a non-tech person first before you send them out, like your parole officer or something. Before you send something out about Marburg virus being rampant in the school, maybe just, think about that a little bit and what the reaction is going to be. Not just that, like, man, they're going to click this, because that is what you want, right? You want them to click it, but geez, oh boy. And fake reviews. You got to love fake reviews. I mean, a lot of times you can spot them, right? You can see one that starts off with like, sure, I can create a review for you, or they've left a lot of foreign language words in it that don't make any sense in this context. And I mean, you can hire companies right now that will write thousands of positive reviews for your junk products. Sure, tell them that this vitamin supplement will make you healthier than ever, and here's 10,000 reviews to prove it. I took this vitamin supplement and now I can fly. But I mean, how do you think I get my teaching evaluations to be really good? I mean, Doug is like a living God walking the earth and inspired me to great heights. 50 or 60 of those things offset the 10 ones that say burn in hell, Vinkman. Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, these days it's hard to tell. Hey, Chat GPT, could you write me a bunch of great teaching evaluations for my database class? Sure, no problem. And it's really hard to tell which reviews are fake. And it's almost made a lot of reviews, almost pointless. I mean, I usually immediately click the 1 and 2 star reviews to see what people are saying negative, because the positive ones are always, like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. I was looking at these like patio heaters the other day, and I was just like, oh, come on. it was just like the reviews are like, this thing is amazing, I mean, on and on. But then you go read the bad reviews and they're like, yeah, it fell apart after 2 days of use, and I'm like, really? But it was amazing for 5,000 people that all had kind of not so great English. But the Federal Trade Commission, which is called the FTC in the United States, is trying to get support in place, and they've actually done it, for a plan to curb fake reviews. And I guess Google and other tech companies are getting on board. I don't know about that. But Google, Yelp, Amazon, and all these companies have been getting a lot more pressure to crack down on misleading and or, false reviews. So the FTC rule did get finalized last week, and it goes into effect in October. I don't know what it'll do, but it prohibits online reviews and firsthand accounts that are that falsely claim to have been written by a real person, including AI-generated posts, as well as those that misrepresent the experience of the person sharing it. Good luck. It also bars businesses. Now, this is the more important part. It bars businesses from purchasing reviews or suppressing bad reviews. Now, this means they can prosecute you. So if they can show that your company hired someone to write reviews and or was doing them with AI, they can do that. And they can also come after you for suppressing bad reviews. And they do have some teeth there. Now, how you enforce the first part of that, how do you know that this is a real review or a fake review? And how can you tell? I mean, if a guy named Vic in Hackensack says that these are the best edible underwear he has ever tasted, exactly how do you chase that down? Are you sending out FTC undercover investigators to find out? I mean, maybe they are. I don't really know how the FTC enforces this stuff. I think they base it on complaints. So if customers complain to the FTC, which you can do, they could investigate this and say, look, how many reviews on here are fake. Now, they'd still have to prove that the company did it willfully and blah, blah, and all the legalese. Now, I was going to Google that whole thing and see, but I started getting afraid of what I might find. Not today, Google. But regardless of all that, it is a move forward toward trying to make some of this stuff actually useful instead of just ridiculous, in my opinion. But anyway, I don't have a guest today. Josh, it may be with Aaron. We're not sure exactly. We saw a photograph of them. Aaron was already like wearing a tutu and prancing around at a music festival in England. And we saw a guy who vaguely looked like Josh standing not too far away. Not sure it was Josh. We've got the AI facial recognition on it, so we will track them down. And both Scotland Yard, Europol, and a variety of military organizations are looking for both of them. Surprising when I told them, when I was asking Europol to look for Aaron, they were like, yeah, we're on that already. Yeah, thank you for your input. So I just phoned in a few anonymous tips here and there, and one of the DHS or somebody's going to pick both of them up pretty soon. So we should have them back pretty shortly. A Kentucky hacker has been sentenced to almost 7 years in prison. Why? Well, the list was long. Basically, the thing they were talking about was he hacked into state databases to fake his own death. Wait, what? Initially I was like, why would I want to fake my own death? But then, I could think of some reasons. But in this case, it was to avoid $116,000 in child support. Like, really, dude? Come on. But Jesse Kipf hacked state death registries in Arizona, Hawaii, and Vermont, and then hacked into a bunch of private businesses and attempted to sell access to their networks on the dark web. Now, that to me is a bunch of different things going on there. They made this out like it was just he was being punished just for faking his own death. But if you read the story, you'll see that this person was involved in all kinds of nefarious activities. Mr. Kip also stole the identities of real people and opened credit accounts, classic identity theft stuff. So, but at this point, Kip has agreed to pay $195,000 in damages. Although I'm like, if he has $195,000, why didn't he just pay this stuff in the first place? But okay. But is planning to pay the child support off and another $80,000 to the states to repair their state death registries. I figure that's a pretty low security priority with them. Even though it shouldn't be, but it probably is. They said it was unclear how he got caught, but he used the username and password of a physician living in another state to access the Hawaii death registry system and created a case for his fake death. Because if you're going to die, it might as well be in Hawaii, right? I mean, eaten by sharks. I don't know, died diving. Who knows? Hawaii's like, dangerous, but nice. If you're going to die, it might as well be there, right? Although I was kind of like, if I was going to die, Finland would be cool, like eaten by reindeers or something. Yeah, that might be okay. Died in Lapland. But after he did this, he then assigned himself, I guess his real self. This is starting to sound like I know how he got caught, but he assigned himself as the medical certifier for the case and certified his death using the doctor's digital signature. Then a lot of places do this, right? I learned this when my friend Lou died, that they don't send out like a coroner, like on one of those TV shows. There was some deputy sheriff who went to a 4-hour training on how to identify foul play in a death or something. And I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, once that had all happened, he was dead in the government databases. And of course, that would propagate, I presume. He then proceeded to break into these other state death systems to collect data, I guess, because he should have already been, or maybe they were ones that didn't show him as dead or something. I don't know. He could have gotten more than 30 years in prison for this whole thing, but made a plea deal because, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, and you should pay your child support. Come on. But anyway, that's the news. Thanks to all of you for being here with just all of me. And hopefully me, Josh, and Aaron, or all of the above, maybe Russ, who knows. I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.